How do you choose the board? So this is the question, how do we choose the board members? I'm going to go through it. I was actually trying to answer these questions. We go back. So these are the benefits. I'll come back. So this is one. It's the benefits of the board. You've mentioned them. You mentioned most of them, which is great. I've added to it, add complementary skills to the team. A lot of the startups don't have the money to be able to pay for full-time employees. Use your board members as this. So this is a cost-effective way, because a number for startups, a number of board, if you ask Ziad, we don't charge. You know, he is making money, he is doing, we don't charge. So all the board members, the Salim is the other board member, you know, he's running a multi-billion-dollar company, they don't charge. So there is a lot of free expertise available that complements your hiring people. So this is quite important. Broaden the business network you've mentioned. Find new talents for succession. Succession for section of the CEO, but also succession of the others. This is quite important. Help the MD CEO maintain a strategic view. This was also mentioned. Instill the discipline of timely and accurate reporting and review process. This is quite important, and you also mentioned it. Validate key planning, budgeting, hiring, and investment decisions. This is important. All, once you get the money, you know, you have money, you will have 50K, 100K, 500K, 5 million. We go up to 5 million for some of these companies. We want to make sure that this money is well spent. In some of the companies, we really spend multi-million dollars in it, and we want to ensure that there is somebody on the board that is controlling that we are spending the money where it needs to be spent. And this decision is a very important decision that we did not mention here, but it was mentioned here. So basically, it's validating the investment decision that you are making. Increase the valuation of the company through good governance premium. This we have mentioned it. So these are the reasons. So boards are important. And you don't need to have a full-fledged board that you do. You could have an advisory board to start with the concept. And most of your company have, you know, you come and you start. Ziad, for instance, who just arrived, he has a company that does all the monitoring for people who have diabetes. So he has created his advisory board. So these are people that comes in and help him on it. And this is purely on an advisory basis. So you could start with an advisory board and complement. So what was his pain point? He wanted to have somebody from the medical field. He wants somebody to help him probably on the sales side. He wants somebody. So you look at your pain point and you choose the people. Now, a mistake that you should not do is choose all your board members coming from the same function as كلهم حكماء وكلهم هيك وما عنده حدا finance وما عنده حدا on sales and marketing. He will fail. So make sure that your board composition is broad and addresses all your key points, not only a specific technical expertise that you have. This is quite important. All right, so this is in terms of benefits of the board. This is a very good slide. I like this slide. My slides are all written, but I like this one because the role of the board is juggle. You're balancing. Like in your life, you always will be balancing. So it is be entrepreneurial and drive the business forward, yet keeping under prudent control. So it's about pushing, but at the same time ensuring that the control foundation is in place. This is one balance. The second balance, be sufficiently knowledgeable about the working of the companies, yet able to stand back from day-to-day management and maintain an objective long-term view. So it's short-term versus long-term. You need to be allowed to, in terms of short-term, making sure that short-term the acts are good, but at the same time the long-term is clear and the short-term is aligned with the long-term. It's another balancing act. The third one, be sensitive to pressure of short-term issues, yet take account of broad long-term trends. Be knowledgeable of local issues, yet aware of wider competitive influence. So it's always local versus global, short-term versus long-term. Tactical, that you need the decisions versus strategic decision that you have to do. Internal within the company versus external. What is happening in terms of the market, the competitors. So this is be focused on commercial needs of the business, yet acting responsibly towards its employees. So the commercial needs, what is the interest of the company, but at the same time make sure that you have also the interest of the employees, your business partner. So what our board members do, they balance. It's a balancing act. And you need to have people who have this balancing ability. If not, if they're too rigid, you will not work. And this is very important to find because very few will say, I need a finance guy. The finance guy is good, but trying to look at these 5 dimensions and see how we could do. And I facilitated to you. Short-term versus long-term. Tactical versus strategic. Internal versus external. And not one is more important than the other. Both are important. And ensure that you have alignment. Any comments on this? So it is a challenging role to find the right person in terms of composition. Okay, ensuring So what are the things that you need to do? And we're going to go determine the board composition and organization. Now, the composition of the board, this is the question that has been raised, is a fundamental question. When I worked with Al Ghurair, the board members were basically all the brothers. So they had all the brothers that were part of it. And my first role that was made me probably the most hated person in it, and I went to the chairman, ما راح تزبط. يعني العائلة بتاخدها بتعمل you have your family reunion at a board level, it's not going to work. So this is one problem, is I told him we want to have non-family members versus family members. And a lot of boards in the Lebanon are very much family members. Now, the second thing that made me even hate it more is you are at the same time as a CEO, you're managing, you have a big position in the company, and at the same time you're on the board. ما بتمشي. يعني you're either an executive, senior executive, or you're a board member. You cannot be both. So what you do, and you cannot have family members being on the board. So we separated. We had non-family members brought in. This is the most difficult decision for a number of family boards. Why? Because boards are aware of everything. وما بدهم people to know that what they have شو المشاكل اللي عندهم شو اسمه. They don't. It's something that is very, we want to keep it confidential. So it's a leap of faith. A leap of faith for any, and I look at all the Lebanese companies, most of them, very few have the vision to be able to say, I'm going to go outside and get expertise outside from it. So this is the first. The second one is to force. We had to force the brothers to choose between, you want to be a CEO of this business unit or you want to be on the board. You cannot be on both. So and these people hated it. And they hated Constantin to come up with these ideas, but this is the only way to do it. And the chairman knew. But he didn't want him to take the blame, so it's much easier for him to hire a CEO. The CEO would take all شو بدك هالحق قسطنطين هو اللي عملها بس خليه نمشيها هالمرة. So I was the black sheep, and he needed a black sheep. He didn't want to be a black sheep. So you need to maintain family unity. So in the case of Technica, it's the same. You want to maintain, Tony wants to maintain the unity in the family, but at the same time, you want to take the right decisions from a board. So if an external investor comes in and see that all your board members are family members, he sees that your board members are at the same time executive members, you will have a big issue in terms of the investment wanting to invest, or your valuation will be much lower. 99%
of companies in Lebanon are family businesses.
Yes.
So how do you tackle this subject?
لا ما بتعمل مشكل. What you do is you come up even for the shareholder. I take the example of Michel. I don't know Michel. Yeah, so Michel is a shareholder. هدول لا it's okay, but I take طيب خلاص جاد بدك جاد نقول جاد. It is so if I come to Michel and I say, look Michel, you're a board member and at the same time you are شو executive position تبعيتك, head of sales or business development, head of sales. So he's head of sales and he's at the same time board member. I say, look, maybe as a board member we could find a better person to be, or as head of sales we could choose between the two. Where do you think you could add most value?
I get that.
But let me continue. So I don't want to create the problem. If I'm good at it, I will tell him that if we get these things, the value of the company would increase much more. And in this point, Michel would say, I'm interested. You have absolutely right, Constantin. But to do this, you have to preach. So this is the whole concept of governance. It's like a preacher. تجي وبتدق على الباب بيسكروا الباب عليك بيسكروا. So am I answering your question? I'm not answering.
No, I fully agree to what you're saying. You said that when an investor comes into the company and finds that the board members are all the family, this will affect his decision.
In the valuation.
In the valuation. So how is it affecting the decision of investors when it comes to local companies who are most of them family businesses?
The companies have two choices. Either they say, I don't want investors, or I want to manage my company the way I see best fit. And this is acceptable. Now, your company will grow at a certain level. You have other companies that today realize that I need capital in order to be able to grow. And to get capital, I need to, because if I don't implement it, one, my valuation will be low, and two, I will not be able to get the expertise for all the reasons that we have mentioned. So these companies, and they start to be. I mean, if you look at Indefco, you look at other companies, these companies realize that there is a value of having a CEO that is not the chairman, having board members that are non-family members, that are independent, and having whatever. So all these are starting to ripple. So they're starting to come. And one of the things that we're trying to do now with the USG Mali Soye is we want to train the founders of small and medium-sized companies on governance, on whatever, all the other elements that we have put, so it starts to dip and they say, okay, this is what we need to do. All right? It was a question, yes, Eliane.
One question is burning me because I want to know the maximum number of people who will be on a
Okay, I'm getting to this. Okay, this is very good. So typically when you have a board, you ask, in the case of, not Ziad, there was another Ziad, Hon Ziad. So you have several Ziad, you have several Raja. So on the case of Ziad, we start with 5. We started, normally 3 is the minimum, because you need to have 3, but typically 5, because normally who do you have? You have the CEO is normally in there, or you have the major shareholder is in there. So you will say you start with a minimum of 3, or 5 is the most. Once we grow in terms of complexity, you could move to 7. You know, so this is very seldomly would you go to 9. So normally 5 will be, so what you have very seldom, big, large group, because you have different pain points and different expertise. You don't want it to be 15, you know, because then you lose because you need to get alignment, you need to get agreement. So I would say you start a minimum of 3. In most cases, it's 5. Once you have 5, you might grow to 7, depending on the pain point and the complexity. You might even go to 9. But most of the companies I worked with, it was between 5 to 7. These are small, medium-sized enterprises. I'm talking up to 25 million or 50 million. Yes, Lina?
I think legally for SIL, it's minimum 3, maximum 12.
Okay, so you have it. Minimum 3, maximum 12. I gave you numbers, so the 7 to 9 is a good level.
I have a question about, well, not only family, but couples.
Yes.
When they are founders and
Yes.
work in the same company and so on. For me, it's a big red flag
Okay.
for different reasons.
Yes.
From having a baby
Yes. To divorce.
to divorce.
Yes.
So,
We prefer the babies.
no, really,
Yeah. Okay, no, it's a good point. It's a good, you see, I mean, the wife is treated as a family member in this case. Now, if the wife, I mean, in the case of Jad, his wife is working in the companies. In the case of Ali, Aya is working in the companies. Most of the companies that we have actually a husband and wife. In most of the companies with whom I work with Stanford in Africa, most of them are husband and wife. And the interesting portion, my respect to all the men in this room, it was the wife that was really taking all the key decisions. So if I didn't have the wife aligned to what we're trying to do, it will not work. So she is, although she might be in the stepping back and letting the man talk, but at the end of the day in Africa, in Lebanon, Jihad is different, Akid. But it's what?
She's taking the decision.
She's taking the decision. يعني فهمها. Oh, you're a follower. Bravo عليك. So it is so this is.
forgotten that this could be.
It is a big problem, because what you do, if both are major shareholders and both are also key executives in it, and you happen that unfortunately in Lebanon, I don't know what the statistics, but 1 marriage out of 2 ends up in a divorce, this could create problem that you have. So for a shareholder, you know, Lina is part of the Lebanese Women Business Angel Fund. They fund a lot of the ladies. These ladies are married. The man is part of it. This could be a question mark in terms of this. So I agree with you. You want to minimize the sort of risk. So this.
Just let the lady take all the decisions.
Let the lady call step back. خلاص, very good. So we have 3 ziyads. Okay, now, so we have determined board composition. Okay, so the board composition, I said typically 5 to 7, depending on the cases. How do you go about choosing them? You list your pain points that you have. What are the pain points? This is the pain points. So you look at what are the, so you have to list it for each one of you. It could be you wanted expertise in terms of finance, or it could be industry expertise, or you want government expertise, or you want operational expertise, or you want technology or marketing or strategy or regional or board experience. You want somebody with board experience. You want diversity in terms of gender, in terms of religion, in terms of, so this, and you have to do it. What is the pain point that you face? And you prioritize them. This is number 1, number 2, number 3. Once you have done this, you're in a better position to be able to find the right board members behind it. So how do you go about finding the right board member? Okay, so how do you go? So actually, I won't show you the slides. What do you think are the ways to go and find? So you have listed your pain points. You've listed, and each one of you have listed his pain point. How do we go about deciding what are the, how do we go about finding the right board members? Okay, so this is one in terms of the qualification criteria. So this is expertise. Expertise is one. The other one, because you as a board, you will have access to all the information in the company. So if you want to have all the information to the company, the first element that you need, somebody who can add value, but most important than this is somebody that you can trust. If you cannot trust the person, so trust. And trust is, this is why in a number of the companies, they tend to, it's not a family member. So what Abdulaziz have done, he said, okay, it's not those, I'm going to go a step and trying to see what is the extended family. So these are the very close friends that we have in terms of the organization. So this is quite important to have. So trust is fundamental. Value that they could bring in is important. What else as criteria? Okay, so you want to have a person who is respected, who has a track record, somebody who has done it, who knows how to, not only he has this experience, but he has proven in the past that he can deliver on what the problem you have. And this should be through his leadership style, who's a track record that you have, somebody that you trust, somebody who is well known. We mentioned the brand. So all these elements are important in deciding and ranking your difference. Now, this was not my question. So this is the selection criteria. So we mentioned those selection criteria. What else do you need as selection criteria before we look at the process? So we looked at trust, we looked at the track record, we looked at his board experience, we looked at sector expertise, but what are the other factors? I'm sorry?
Connections.
Okay, you have the connections, you have this is quite important. Availability is important. You have people, unfortunately I'm one of them, I sit on about 15 different boards, across East Africa, West Africa, Lebanon, and I have a couple also in Europe. So how much can you be available? As a board member, you have at least 1 day, if not 2 days per quarter. At least 1 or 2 days that you have to do to be, especially if you have to fly to the place and fly back. So are you available? Can you actually take, and if in case in the situation, I'm at the limit. And normally the board will be afraid. I mean, this guy is involved in so many of the boards. How much can he really add value? It happens that I started with a small number. And it happens that these people understood me and I was spending a lot of time and they are acceptable to the fact that what I call I'm a low-touch board member. So I cannot spend 3 days a quarter. I would spend 1 day a quarter. And they said, it's fine, Constantin. But others would say, Constantin, we need 3 days a quarter in order for you to be able to add value. So availability is important. What else is important?
To what extent do you look at fit with the rest of the board members?
You look at what?
Fit.
Okay, so as a chairman, you need to make sure that there is the right dynamics. If there is no right dynamics, if somebody is monopolizing all the ma'ahtizbat. So it's the communication style. It's the ability. We don't want to have prima donnas in terms of the board. We want people who are humble, who knows what they have, who can relate to it. So this chemistry is important. So the DNA and the fit is important. In some ways, if they don't know each other, it's not a must. It's not a must. They get to know each other. Most importantly, they enjoy working together in resolving what are the problems. So finding the right chemistry fit is important. So we mentioned chemistry fit is important. We mentioned availability. What else is important? Okay, so is he conflicting or is she conflicting? I'm sitting on 2 boards. So some of these companies have similar business model. One is focusing East Africa, the one West Africa, but both are going to expand in each other territory. I need to raise it, and it could be an issue. So is the person conflicting is quite important.
Market differentiation.
Could be. It's any other elements. Affordability. Some people would say that to be a board, this is my ticket. Some companies cannot afford to pay. A number of the companies in Lebanon can pay 0. All they could do is 0. But at the same time, you want this person. So what do? You cannot pay in cash because you don't have, okay, so you have shares. So what you do is and I've been approached by companies, they say, Constantin, look, I will need your time. I need for you to help me raise capital. I know to raise capital takes of your time, and I know that normally if somebody they take a percentage, making it 3%, 5%, depending on the amount to be raised. I don't have the money to pay you this thing, but I'm willing to give you 1%, 2%, 3% of the company, depending on the value. So this is a way to say, and you like it. Why? Because you're not paying, but at the same time, this person owns it. So he is committed to increase the value because this is how he will increase it. So to look at ways to compensate, which is not necessarily cash, but look at stock option is becoming more and more common behind it. So this will be one way of looking, getting the right talents, and ensuring that these talents are going to grow. So affordability is important. Even if you cannot pay 0, you have other ways to pay. Now, I'll be very frank. A number of the companies in Lebanon, I charge 0. But there are other companies who have means and I charge what would be market rate. In some cases, this could be $2,000, could be $3,000 per day that you spend on the board. So depending on which board it is, depending on their ability, so you could do this. But when you start and you do a good job, these companies at one point in time are going to be valuable, and then you could do it. So how much do you charge? No, how do you define how much you charge? I'm going to get to your point. How do you decide about how much you charge? If there is going to be, so if you have to, how do you go about deciding how much we have to pay for a board member?
The percentage from the gross?
Okay, it's the best, but beside the percent, yes.
Depends what is the income that the...
Okay, so it's related to it. So what is the added value that you have? But independent of the added value. So how do you do it?
Evaluate their expertise. Like if we want to bring an assistant
Yes.
in finance,
Yes, you know how much it costs. It's good. So typically these board members are people with at least 15, 20 years of experience behind it. You know what is their market value. Normally what you do, and we do this across, so I have data now across 15 different boards across different countries, there is a range, what we call sitting fees. So how much do you pay for people to sit on a daily basis? There is a range, and this data is available. And we could know how much it is in Lebanon, how much it will be in Dubai, how much is it in, for a given size of the company. So it depends on the company size, it depends on the amount of time that you work, and it depends on, so you have data available. So you could decide to pay it in cash, or you could decide to pay it in shares. So this will be, but there is benchmarks available, and we have data about how much is a board director costing behind, okay?
Is that generally like equal to the person's consulting rate of doing it?
It would be in general equal to this. So what you need, because the board, we use a board, selective number of days. Typically, it will be, your board meets 4 times a year. A board normally is half a day. It could extend because there is another half day. We get together, we visit a factory, we do this. So let's say it's a day. It takes about at least a day to prepare for the board because you have to go through the board pack, and I will show you an example of board pack. So it takes about 2 days per quarter, so it's about 8 days. You want to do it, it's about 10 days. This is why you need to look at how many boards can you say. So 10 days, so we will say it's 10 days of expertise. This is how much we believe this is right. Some of the board, all the big nationals, it's big amounts. So we're talking 15,000, we're quoting 20,000 per day. So this could be per day. So this, and a lot of people, retired people, semi-retired people, make their living on sitting on boards of different companies that they do. But in Lebanon, it's much more realistic. It's $500 to $1,000 per day. It would be typical rate. For startup, it's zero. It's sweat equity against it. Salameh, what is your experience in terms of rates of boards?
I mean, the ones that I know are pro bono.
Pro bono. So this is you have.
Yeah, or equity.
Or equity. Okay, but the equity should be equivalent to whatever is a daily fee. So if it's 10 days per things, if the company is valued at $10 million in this case, and we spend 10 days, and let's say over 3 years, it's 30 days. If I charge $1,000 per day, this is the rate in Lebanon, it's 30,000. I will look at 30,000 as what will be. So if the company is worse, this is about 0.3% or 3%, I forgot the ratio. So this will be the way we go. So what we do here is we look at the pain point. You've looked at the pain point. You've identified your selection criteria. You've said what are the selection criteria. How do you go about getting the candidates now? Yes, Michel.
The question was, how do we ensure they're not influenced by, these people are either friends or connections to the shareholder?
Yes.
How do we ensure when they take the decision they're not influenced by the person who chose them to be on the board?
It's a very good point. So this is what you do, and this is what we define the concept, and I will carry this, independence. Actually, I could show you the slides. This is a very important slide. This is basically the duties of a director. So the duties, and this is a very important slide. I mean, all slides are important, but this is, I feel very strong on this one. There is a lot, and these duties have to be taken very seriously. One duty is independence. Independence for whoever have selected them, and integrity. So if any of these, if I feel that because I have to pay back a favor, you've asked me, I'm failing on my independence thing. Integrity is very clear. If you step on integrity, you're out. There is no choice. So this is independence, and you have spirit of inquiry, constructive dissent. It's important that we disagree. It's fine, but it needs to be constructive. Spirit of, you have to look, get your facts. Inquire. A lot of people, if you're too passive, you won't. So this takes it takes an inquisitive mind. Here it takes a negotiation, influence. It's not either my way or your way on it. So you have to find a way. Search for relevant facts. Don't give me feelings. Don't tell me how you are, or don't tell me. Give me the elements that I sit down with you. We look at it together. We rationalize it, and then we make a decision. So this pillar is a fundamental pillar. All the recent disasters, so this is what you had in terms of bankruptcy, there was a lack of sense of curiosity. This is taken by the auditors, characterized by acceptance of everything the management says. So this is the worst thing than a board member. So this is the first pillar, integrity and independence. The second pillar is openness. You should not hide. You should put the facts from both sides. So there needs to be openness in terms of the data. There needs to be openness in terms of the feedback. I'm not here to, I don't want to mabdi ego taba راح ياخد قتلي. So I tend to, you have to be very open in terms of candid sharing of opinions, in terms of participation on it, and in terms of respect for common sense and intuition. So this is another pillar that is very important. It's your responsibility when you choose your board members to ensure that you have. A third dimension is accountability. you are, as a board member, accountable. Legally, if it's a proper board, you are accountable. If these financial statements are wrong, an investor is coming in and making his contribution on this, and then it happens that these numbers were wrong, I go to jail. I have falsified the information and I have approved, because the board approves financial statements. These are audited financial statements approved by the board. If I sign on something and this something is wrong, you are accountable, not for an advisory board, but for a proper board. So accountability, self-management, peer management that you have, action orientation. I'm not here to listen and to ask questions. I'm here to also help in terms of the implementation of it. So you want board members who could roll the sleeves and being able to invest and immerse in it. And the last one is duty of mutual trust and respect. No matter what says, we have to respect confidentiality inside and outside, respect for expertise and diversity of opinion, and active and respectful listening. It's very difficult to be able to implement those. It's very difficult. And this is where it takes maybe several months, if not years, to be able to find. It's the same thing between you and between, I mentioned Roger and Najwa. Roger and Najwa. So probably they have their own pillars. And to be able to have these different pillars in terms of a couple, it's the same thing across the board. And these takes time. And you have back and forth, you learn, and then you say, okay, I need to adapt my style and be able to be different in this respect because my DNA was different from it. And this is a process like in a couple that you have. It takes months, it could take years to find it. But once you have this mutual respect, once you're open, once you have integrity, if you have all these elements, I think your chances as a couple to succeed will be much higher. And the chances as a board to succeed will be higher. So this is quite an important slide that we have.